Welcome to 3. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. We are right in between Indian Wells and Miami right now. So Indian Wells in the books. Now we will take it to the East Coast. Amy and I will both be going to Miami. And obviously for this episode of 3, we don't have a lot of, or we have zero results as far as Nadal and Djokovic are concerned to discuss. But we were talking, and there are a bunch of topics that we are all interested in discussing, and I think that you guys are going to enjoy very much. We'll get into Alcaraz. We're going to get into Medvedev, and we want to talk about the women's game as well. Let's start there. I feel like we're all on the same page right now. We feel like there has been a little bit of a shift towards stability at the top of women's tennis, which the men's game, thanks to the players, largely thanks to the players who we focus on this show, have had a very long era of stability at the top of the game. And the women's game, especially in the post-Serena era, has not had that, but it feels like that might be shifting. Is that what you're thinking, Amy?
Yes, I tweeted, could we have the next big three-ish or triangular rivalry? And you got to understand, like, I watch other sports. I take breaks from tennis. I'll go even a couple of weeks without really watching much. And then I'll dial back in and my eyes are really fresh and my antennas are up for things that look really different to me. And these three players, Rybakina, Sabalenka, and Swiatek, we may be onto something here because watching the contests play out the way that they have in Indian Wells and Australia, I just think the speeds are different, the tactics are different, the serving, especially from Sabalenka and Rybakina, is next level. And I'm finally really drawn to women's tennis in a way that I haven't been in quite some time.
I would call it I was just in Indian Wells for 10 days, and I think I would use the word, I would call it more dominance than stability. I don't seek stability in sports. I think we're just looking for sometimes we'd like to see dominance because that stability would imply, well, instability. I think we're looking at just
let me interrupt. Dominance is stable.
Fine. Okay, good. All right. We'll take our dictionaries and we'll carry on. I like that. So anyway, those three, I think the serve is particularly an important part of what's making them so good. And it was really interesting to see that. I mean, to see Rybakina, I spent some time with her. I did a one-on-one interview with her and wrote a story about her, and see how tranquil she is. I mean, it's like her brilliant opaqueness. And when I was watching her play the final versus Sabalenka, I said to him, well, how do you like your power, with the volume on or with the volume off? And they're both great players. I mean, Sabalenka has made some major improvements in the last year and won her first major. Rybakina won Wimbledon. Iga holds the other two. So yeah, here we have something. I mean, we're not going to do this whole assertion well, you're only 60 slams short of the three. We get that, but in a way, there's something might be coalescing that's exciting in how to play. And this has happened before. And it's often a three-legged thing. There was Everett Navratilova and Tracy Austin. There was Connors, Borg, and McEnroe. There these things, it kind of works that way to a degree. And so it's exciting to ponder, particularly as we head into Miami, where each of them has a feeling they could win Miami, the defending champion, and the other two did really well in Indian Wells, and then on into the clay. So it's it's an exciting time.
And let's be clear about kind of what brought this about. The obvious part is, yes, we have had a rematch of the Australian Open final in the Indian Wells final, which is rare and it tells you something. But even if you look at the race coming into Indian Wells, it was number 1 Sabalenka, number 2 Rybakina, and number 3 Swiatek. And then at the end of the tournament, well, there are the three at the end of another big tournament once again. The other aspect is it's in such a stark contrast to last year, where the prevailing question throughout 2022 was, wait, who's Iga's challenger? Like, who
Mhm.
is it? And the answer, for the most part, was like, doesn't really exist.
Right. And now we have the two other players who have captured slams last year. I like the way Rybakina plays. I so like her subdued, the way her stroke. She doesn't appear to have a pulse, and she's just so low key. Someone was telling me they thought she was boring. I said, "There's nothing is inherently boring. Nothing is inherently that way. I'm not looking for her to sound like give some great sound bites." And she says some thoughtful. She's not rude. She's just playing tennis, and her racket is speaking plenty. And Sabalenka is terrific too.
It was interesting, Iga's comments after this last loss to Rybakina. She said something along the lines of, it was not really an insult if you read the whole quote in context. So please, don't take that this way. But she said that it was more me, Iga, my errors, my mistakes. And as we know, that's how you win. You force the other person to make errors or force them out of their comfort zone. But it's interesting how Iga has viewed this set of losses at the Australian Open and Indian Wells, and just a fabulous rivalry going forward. Somebody, when I tweeted about this, somebody said, "Oh, what about Osaka?" No, I think that she will return. She probably will return if she does, but I think she will, and the game will be changed. That's what I'm seeing. I think the speeds are increasing, ratcheting up, and the serves, and you've got to be an elite server, and you're going to have to return, these ladies' serves. So I think we're in the midst of a very exciting time in women's tennis.
Well, we'll see with Osaka, because she's pretty good at those two important shots. But you're right, the game keeps moving forward, and so we'll see. I hope she does come back, because she's great. I mean, she's won 4 majors. I think with Iga, I think it's interesting to see, there's that line between taking responsibility for losing, being aware of what you did to have that happen, and then the whole giving credit part and calibrating that. Again, it's been a while since she's had to do that too often, because she played so well last year and won so many significant titles. Though I was a little disturbed to see her talking at length about an injury. I think it's more sporting not to, until if it gets discovered, you can say something to it and be as concise as possible. But I think you're right. 2 losses in a row at big events to someone like that. And the other thing with Rybakina, she kind of gives you nothing to dig into other than her racket. Like Jimmy Connors once said, it was very hard for him to play Bjorn Borg. He couldn't find anything to hate about him. And she's just going about it. She has this detachment, which is a thing that's taught by teachers. A teacher I work with, Steve Stefanski, talks about. She's almost detached from her outcome expectation, and she just hits the tennis ball.
Andy Roddick said that about Roger Federer. It was hard to hate him. It was hard to get fired up to play Roger. And I think they had to consciously work at developing the killer instinct to try to kill this really nice guy across the net who keeps beating me.
Well, when you draw on that to win matches, that's the peril of drawing on some manufactured emotion to try to beat someone, rather than just, Nadal doesn't have any animus towards his opponents. It's just towards the ball and the game. So it's just these ways about how people construct themselves, right? Nadal would rather beat someone he likes.
Yeah, no, that's a fascinating aspect. And while we're on this topic, I think it should definitely be said, Iga is not shy about talking about who she modeled her game after. She even has said in interviews that she, growing up, did not watch a lot of women's tennis, did not watch a vast array of men's tennis either, watched Rafa Nadal. She was a Nadal fan, and that is where her kind of heavy topspin game that was even more apparent in 2020 when she first won Roland Garros. She's changed a little bit from that point, but I feel like she's developed the most gifted modern forehand in WTA history. And I think it's because she saw Nadal and she was like, oh, that's the forehand that I am trying to achieve.
I like that. I think though now these rivals, this is like the first time in her period of ascent where she's, there are challengers.
Yes.
I'm not just beating people, and the people are beating me, and she's got to kind of problem solve that and figure some things out. It's also that Indian Wells, that's the slowest hard court in the world. And I saw so many points where players should I stay or should I go? And then you get passed, and you're going to get passed more. And so you got to then hunker down, and you're back behind the court. And then it's the slow bounce and the thin air. So
Yes.
calibrating the ball, like, it's funny. I was thinking about this. I played there years ago with a friend, and we really enjoyed it because we were getting depth. We were getting more depth. But now that I've improved some of my ground strokes, when I played there, they were going long. It's really tricky to calibrate things in that thin air. I mean, Miami will be interesting to see because that's a totally different condition, and you guys are going to be there. It'll be interesting to see how it's thicker air. Court's probably not as slow.
And then we'll move on to clay, where conceivably Iga would have the edge over Rybakina, and the rivalry would continue there because Elena's serve would be mitigated somewhat on the clay surface. So I would love to see them meet during clay season. Hopefully that'll happen.
The serves
we should point out though that Rybakina is not 3 in the world. I mean, these three are not 1, 2, 3. Sabalenka is 2 in the world. So Rybakina has the hot hand right now, and that's why we're talking about her. But there's Pegula and others in front of her.
Krejcikova had that incredible run in the Middle East where she took out 1, 2, 3 in the world plus Kasatkina. Like, the best run of the year has been Krejcikova's.
I think Krejcikova is terrific. She's got so many skills. I just like to see her kind of sustain it more often. She's such a versatile player. So it's a really exciting time in women's tennis. Yeah, we're talking about the race. I mean, things happened last year with Wimbledon. Sabalenka was banned from playing it. Rybakina, like all the other players who played it, didn't get her points, and who paid for that most, but the player who won the tournament, and other players too would have gotten points. So it's just the point race now is a better indicator.
Yeah. We could talk more about, I feel like, their games, but we should move on to some other topics here. It's a good thing to monitor, though. Absolutely. And this was good. So let's go to Alcaraz, the champion, who was playing his first hard court tournament of the season and was coming off a hamstring strain in Rio de Janeiro. So coming in, it was like, is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be at his best? And I thought that, that was legitimately, those were fair questions. And then he completely hit the ground running, and it was an unbelievable run. I thought Jannik Sinner was playing a great level. He got through Sinner, and then he ended Daniil Medvedev's 19-match win streak. The strange thing in regards to what's going on with Alcaraz is he wasn't playing in January because he was injured, and Djokovic was dominating. And then now Djokovic isn't playing here in March and in February, and Alcaraz is dominating, and we won't get them together until April. But it's strange because it feels unresolved. It feels unresolved because not that one match is going to tell us everything, but it seems like there's that tier 1, and some people gave me a little bit of resistance when I said Alcaraz is tier 1 at the beginning of the year with Djokovic. Maybe I'd get less resistance if I said it now, but I feel like that's the tier 1. And unfortunately, it feels like they're taking turns playing one at a time instead of playing together.
Yeah, it is. That is unfortunate. And so we'll just have to kind of patiently sit until clay court season and see what happens when how they come in with each other. I think part of me is looking, that Roland Garros draw, who you got him. I mean, you've got to figure that Alcaraz, Novak, and Rafa are the 3 primary contenders at Roland Garros, even though we're months away and there's health and all these other factors. But it's interesting. In the meantime, Alcaraz, watching him in Indian Wells, the cult around Carlos, as you guys know, the practice courts at Indian Wells are a great feature of the event, and they were just packed. I'm looking to the time they're going to monetize those. and say, you gotta show like a $2 something. Either way,
They already
Don't
have.
give them any ideas. Don't give them any ideas.
Yeah,
You gotta
sure,
buy a ticket.
I'm
That's
sure
one of
they
the
thought
simple pleasures of going to a tennis tournament
well,
is
the watching him, the audience watching him practice, it was just rock and roll, and the enthusiasm he brings to everything, to seeing this guy. I mean, there was a point in the Sinner semifinal. It was when he was no, it wasn't when he was down set point. It was another one, maybe to consolidate a break. Great backhand half volley down the line, like a John McEnroe shot. Stick the forehand volley down the line, then hit a backhand angle overhead. Oh, it's not going to be a winner. In comes Sinner. Carlos is back. Oh, yeah, hit a topspin lob and end the point. He had 4 shots that each could be a highlight reel in one point.
we talk about, like with Djokovic and Nadal, we talk about God mode. Oh, he's gone into God mode. For Alcaraz, it's Energizer Bunny mode. If he doesn't have an injury keeping him down, he goes into Energizer Bunny mode, and it's really unstoppable. But what I was thinking about when Medvedev made that comment in the trophy ceremony about how Alcaraz must have said hi to 400 people in one day or whatever it was he said, I realized, like, okay, this is who this guy is. He's decided he's going to play the respectful card and the halo over my head and Mr. Nice Guy. And it occurred to me that for people who are suffering because Roger Federer has retired and feeling like, now what do I do? My favorite is gone, and they're grieving. How easy it is to transfer your fandom from Roger over to this guy because of the similarity in the way they conduct themselves.
And the way they play the points. Like I made a joke, and of course, it's a joke that's not a joke that is a joke. After that point I just described, I turned to someone, I go, Roger who? I mean, obviously not, but still, I think the joy, baseball player, one of the great baseball players, Willie Mays, was known as the Say Hey Kid, and he brought this energy just like Magic Johnson and Patrick Mahomes. It's like, yeah, let's just play. Let's play. Love to play.
Does anybody smile more?
No.
Nobody.
I don't think anyone's ever smiled more ever. I mean, you should compare the smile-o-meter of all the number ones also.
Yeah.
And he's already, no, you see him in his press conference, he's smiling and he's greeting people. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I also think the Federer comparison, that's who he has always said, who, he plays like more than Nadal, when everybody was slapping the Nadal thing on, because he's trying to end points on his terms. And the reason I bring that up is because my big takeaway from the Medvedev match, besides some of the variety we saw, the serve and volley, was actually from the baseline, just the discipline and the patience that he brought to the court. Because that's where I feel like he has not really taken from, I'm going to put Murray in this, Murray, Djokovic, and Nadal, the ilk of really valuing the ability to limit the errors, to not miss. And that's where I don't think he's ever really bought into that. This Medvedev final was the first time I saw him at times, be in these backhand exchanges and been like, okay, I understand that I need to be patient right now, and that's going to give me the best chance.
Totally agree with you, Gill, because he's the creator. So he wants to make, and that's where the Federer connection comes in. And he wants to find a way to crack the point open. And with Medvedev, as we've seen, that can be dangerous. So instead, you realize when you play someone like Medvedev is mostly always going to give you a chance to miss. He's going to look for you. He's going to give you a chance to overplay and make a stupid decision. So hang there, and you'll get your shot. And then you have to execute, and Alcaraz can kind of kick it into gear. But you see, it'll be interesting to see how Medvedev, a pleasing run these last few weeks, winning tournaments and winning matches, but at the same time hitting against the wall of some of his limitations, just like he did in the Australian Open final last year versus Nadal. You see Alcaraz, that was a dispatching. What was that, about 71 minutes?
5 games.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned Andy Murray, because looking at the Miami Open draw, Alcaraz and Murray could play each other in the third round.
Mhm.
So, and the way Andy's playing right now, he's pushing everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a subpar, sub 200 in the world or you're 3 in the world. Andy Murray's going to push you and push you. So that could be an interesting match. I suspect Alcaraz has some fatigue. But just going back to what you were saying before, Gil, about how he played well against Medvedev from the baseline, that's part of what makes him so exciting, because I remember watching the match and thinking, is Carlos going to come in on this one, or is he going to battle from the baseline? I just don't know. Is there any rhyme or reason to what he's doing, or is it a feel thing? And it just adds that extra layer of excitement.
Well, I think it's a number of things. I heard someone talk about his brilliance and his things. They say, oh, maybe that's just in his DNA. I don't believe that. I think tennis players learn things. That doesn't mean they're overly coached, trained. It's how you learn the game and how you practice, and how when you're young in the formative stages. I mean, whether the things you work on and the instructor who helps you sharpen them and the routines you do. And you can just see he's just like devoured the breadth of tennis. That's what it's similar to what Federer had done in a way, in his way. Like, yeah, drop shots, volleys. There's a whole literature out there for me to avail myself of. So why not eat it up? And he obviously was proficient and dedicated, and there must have been enough results to encourage him to keep doing it. And it's a real breath of fresh air. I mean, he could play a ball boy and it would be exciting.
I think for Medvedev, amazing run. But the feeling, I guess, that I got from the final is Medvedev must be thinking, oi, another guy who's going to serve and volley and do it really, really, really well and challenge my court position with the drop shot. And he's going to do it better than anyone else. I mean, because Medvedev, there are a lot of matchups for him. I mean, he has owned the Zverev head-to-head. He's played Sinner really, really well. He plays Djokovic tougher on hard courts over the course of the last 3-4 years than really anybody. But Kyrgios seems to give him fits. And I feel like Alcaraz in the same way might be able to do that.
The disruptive attackers, because Kyrgios, I mean, put aside his personality, when he's playing well, he's a very tactically adroit player. He's holding steady from the baseline. He's coming in, and then these guys sometimes who kind of draw Medvedev in, not one of my favorite terms, but it happens. You see some of Medvedev's volley technique. I mean, that was not pro level volley technique, particularly on the forehand volley. So he is not very comfortable up there, and so he may need to see, wow, I need to hit them before they hit me. So
it's so obvious, the playbook against Medvedev for Alcaraz, because one of his biggest weapons or best tools is the drop shot. And Medvedev, no secret about it, doesn't like being in that part of the court. So
he's pretty good, though, I think, when he gets to drop shots, at actually hitting it really hard whenever he kind of tracks it down.
If he can hit a winner, if he can run down that drop shot and hit a pass off it and whip his way out of the point, that's fine. But he has to defend net positioning and be in that place. That
would be interesting to look at. Does the rally extend beyond the drop shot itself? And what are Medvedev's percentages there? If he can, hit a winner off of that, chase it down, or if it extends past that shot, he does look uncomfortable.
I think Sinner's going to will play better against Medvedev more, because I was impressed with seeing Sinner's improvement and things he's putting into his game. I mean, his striking is very impressive, but he's learning to become somewhat more comfortable in other parts of the court, somewhat. But Alcaraz is already, it's like there, and he's only a teenager.
I have to say, I'm disappointed in Medvedev. I don't like the complaining about the court and the slowness of it. And by the way, he made the finals. So how bad could it really be? His one Grand Slam is on a hard court, probably slower than average. I mean, it's like, dude, what do you want here? I would like to see him add some dimension to his game before he starts complaining about the courts.
Indian Wells court much slower than that U.S. Open court he won on, though, if I may. But he and the thin air part in his ball and just not feeling comfortable.
So you're giving him
no, I don't
more
like.
to...
No, I don't like it when players complain. I mean, I don't like. I think complaining, it's almost like a form of tanking. It's it's a way you're writing a story that lets you off the hook instead of just getting down to your business.
So Joel, would the Indian Wells hard court be farther away from the US Open hard court than clay would be from the US Open hard court?
I think so. I think so.
Really?
I think clay is interesting.
I agree.
Clay is an interesting thing these days, is that clay, clay has gotten faster as players have been able to, the racket head speed era has made clay a different type of clay than kind of the classic defense clay of bygone years. So I think, and clay can, the ball can die more on clay, the drop, different things, certain volleys work better on clay. Slow hard courts, as slow as Indian Wells, that's a really tough sledding, and also the physical impact of it. I mean, it was the Zverev match where he was most perturbed, right? And Zverev has got a good kind of game for slow hard.
Players move better on hard a little bit. They have better footing, they have better grip. So that's an aspect of it as well. I don't mind the Medvedev complaining, though. I think it was highly entertaining. I don't know that I would. Yeah, does that not count? I thought it was entertaining. I don't think it harms anybody. I like players to show their personality on the court and what they're thinking. If I were his coach, I might say, hey, guy, you want to focus in here and stop being a victim and put your head down and see what you can do and problem solve? Yes, if I were his coach, I'd say that. But from my perspective, it doesn't bother me that he's complaining.
Very interesting. I just think it doesn't advance his cause. I guess as a fan, yeah, it's like, okay, I can watch it. This guy's kind of whining, and a lot of us whine and get upset. I think it's not helping him. It's not helping him compete better. So that's kind of I feel bad for his, but look at this though. It's very interesting. We got all these players we're talking about, Rybakina, Medvedev, Alcaraz, a lot of interesting personalities and demeanors out there. It's kind of interesting. It's almost like the, après le big three is this whole other realm.
Yeah, Medvedev's an amazing personality. I think he has a lot of sense of humor and also a lot of thoughtfulness. But more than anything, it's just I don't think he has that kind of media trained thing about him. I feel like he will actually tell it to you straight.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. I mean, he's given us something to talk about. So, and he really is one of my favorite players to watch and cover. So, fair point.
Okay, Miami, real quick. It is quite the adjustment. I remember last year, there's only two players who made the quarters at both Indian Wells and Miami on the men's side. The two players. So Alcaraz was one. Do either of you remember the second one?
Was that Casper Ruud?
Nope.
Hurkacz?
Nope.
Amy?
Kyrgios?
Nope. Okay, I'm gonna say it.
Wait, no, you're gonna give us a hint. You're gonna give us a hint.
Hint. He has. That's a tough hint.
All right,
Let's
just
see.
give it. That's
Miomir Kecmanovic.
Oh,
He would have been here a long time. That would have been
yeah.
Wow.
Guys,
Wow.
Yeah, he's the only. Him and Alcaraz were the only guys. Remember, he played that epic quarterfinal against Alcaraz in Miami.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, it's kind of a tough thing for me because I'm really high on the players who did well at Indian Wells, whether it be, namely Sinner, Alcaraz, and Medvedev, Fritz as well. But at the same time, it seems like a lot of players can't do well at both. So it puts me in an interesting position. Amy, I know that you've completed your preview. I have not completed mine. So I'm curious to hear how you looked at it.
Well, I wrote an article a couple weeks ago on Ben Shelton, and I picked him as a dark horse semifinalist. I picked some unusual names. I picked Tiafoe. And a lot of this has to do with the quarters that these people are in. And I picked Alcaraz, although I'm a little concerned about fatigue. And Tsitsipas, who is the top seed in, one quarter, I think is going to be looking ahead to clay season. He loves clay. It's his favorite surface. He hasn't been playing well. So yeah.
He's got a shoulder injury, and I don't know why he's playing, frankly.
He may pull out at some point, but Tiafoe is in that quarter, and that's a big reason why I picked Francis to come through. And then I picked Sinner to come through. So there you go.
Okay. So Alcaraz does have what it takes to win this Sunshine Double, becoming the youngest guy ever to do it.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where it is until he proves otherwise. It's like a guy like this, you don't want to pick against or doubt. And just a note that I picked Sinner because he was struggling with those blisters last year. I think he would have had a really good run because he had been playing well if he hadn't had to withdraw because of the blisters.
And he got to the finals in 21.
Yep.
Lost to Hurkacz. Yeah, interesting. I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting tournament. Yeah, it is interesting about how the players play in each of them, and whether the weather and the courts. I suspect the disparity between the speed of the courts gotten further in years. I mean, Indian Wells has been slow for a long time, but it wasn't always this slow. It wasn't always that slow at the times when people like Courier and Chang and Sampras did that double.
Have we noticed a difference in court speed from Crandon Park to Hard Rock Stadium?
You tell me. I'm not. I don't. That's an onside question. I don't know. I wonder about that.
The thing I've heard about Miami, I don't totally have a handle on this. I should investigate this more, but there's a big disparity between the stadium court and the outer courts. I think the stadium court supposedly is faster, much faster. Unlike other tournaments where, there's some difference between the show courts and the other courts. I think this tournament in particular, there's a huge difference.
I also think, I believe at least, and I don't know, maybe they fixed this, that the first year or two in the new Miami place, the field courts were east-west or something. They weren't all properly north-south. Do you recall some of that, either of you guys?
I do not, but let's explain. So that becomes a sun issue, correct?
And a wind, and a wind issue. And kind of a wind issue.
The first year that I went, this will be the third time that I've been to the new setup. The first year I went, it was cloudy almost the entire time, or I was in the stadium court, which is very unusual, by the way. It's a stadium for football, and the way they have it set up, they did the best they could, but it's unusual to say the least.
Or was the stadium? No, the wind is interesting. Like in California, it's often a crosswind that goes from west to east. That often happens. I was playing someone once, playing doubles, and this person was lobbing like gangbusters from across the court, and I realized east-west court. So then instead of it being kind of in the cross, it was going right with the wind. It was like running. So if the wind is going a certain kind of way, an east-west court could affect the wind too. And sun, I think it's just interesting to explore. I don't know about the speed.
The outer courts are temporary, so they can change the angles. And right. Now that you say that, I remember looking at grandstand last year and going, that's catty corner. That seems like moved. So you may be onto something there.
Okay, so that's something maybe when you guys are there, you can kind of get a little bit of the 411 on. Yeah.
We will. Amy and I will go investigate the direction of the courts. Joel is so smart. I would never figure that out in a million years out there on the court. That's for sure.
Oh, mid-match?
No, I would never figure that out. I would not be thinking east, west, north, south. It doesn't even mean anything to me. I plug wherever I have to go. I plug it in my GPS and I go where it tells me to go.
I need to know these things.
Yeah, I'm an indoor player, so I'm always thinking about north, south, east, west, and in my pipe dream, I think, oh, I'll have a court someday, and when I do, I'm going to position it exactly where I like the sun, or I like to play in the morning, and all that stuff.
Well, you could also do. I know there's a joke all the time about someone who got a court and they put the fence on the side of the ad court really close so they could hit the slice serve.
Smart.
Wow. Home court advantage to the max in that case. Can't wait for Miami. Another 2 weeks. We will talk to you after that as we head into Monte Carlo. At that point, maybe we'll talk to you during Miami because, of course, Amy and I, again, will be there. If you're in Miami,
I'll bring my headsets.
Look out for us. Look out for us. Say hi. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. We appreciate it if you leave a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next time on the next episode of 3.